They said he'd lost his mind. A mechanic stranded in a burning battlefield, surrounded by wreckage and death. His tank was destroyed, his crew gone. But instead of running, he stayed. And what he did next turned a dead machine into a legend the enemy would never forget. This is the story of the Mad Mechanic. It happened in the final months of World War II, somewhere on the Eastern Front. The snow was blackened with oil, the air thick with smoke and frozen blood. The Red Army was pushing hard, tanks rolling across the ruins of old villages. Among them was Sergeant Ivan Makarov, a battlefield mechanic. He wasn't supposed to fight. His job was to fix what others broke: patch engines, weld armor, keep the tanks breathing. But war doesn't care about roles. One morning, his unit was ambushed. German anti-tank guns opened fire from the tree line. In seconds, the battlefield turned into a graveyard of steel. Makarov's T-34 took a direct hit. The shell tore through the side, killing 2 of his crew instantly. The rest bailed out, burning, screaming, crawling through mud. And when the smoke cleared, only Makarov was left alive. He could have run. He could have waited for rescue, but instead, he looked at his burning tank and whispered, "Not yet." The T-34 was dead, track broken, turret jammed, fuel leaking like blood. But to Makarov, it wasn't just metal. It was his friend, his fortress. He decided he'd bring it back, no matter what. Under enemy fire, he crawled back into the wreck. He tore off his gloves, hands bleeding as he pried open panels scorched by flames. He scavenged parts from nearby destroyed tanks, gearboxes, armor plates, even a gun barrel. For 2 days, he worked alone in the freezing cold. No food, no sleep, just the sound of distant artillery and his own heartbeat. Soldiers who passed by thought he'd gone insane. They called him the Mad Mechanic. But Makarov didn't care. He rewired the circuits, patched the leaks with rags soaked in oil, and welded with sparks flying into the night. By dawn of the 3rd day, the tank coughed. Then it roared. Smoke poured from its rear like a wounded beast, but it moved. The German lines were just a few hundred meters ahead. Makarov had no crew, no backup, only one working cannon, and a heart full of rage. He climbed into the commander's seat, loaded a shell by hand, and aimed. The first shot hit an enemy supply truck. A fireball erupted, lighting up the forest. German soldiers froze, thinking the Soviets had launched a new assault. Then the second shot came, then the third. Each shell slammed into their position, precise, relentless, like a ghost returning from the dead. They tried to counterattack, but the snow and smoke hid his position. Makarov used his knowledge as a mechanic to keep the engine running just long enough between bursts. Every time it sputtered, he'd slam it with a wrench, cursing in Russian. For 6 hours, he fought alone. One man, one half-broken tank. By the time reinforcements arrived, the tree line was littered with burning wrecks, and Makarov's T-34 was still standing, scarred, cracked, but alive. When Soviet troops reached him, they found Makarov slumped over the controls, unconscious, covered in oil and blood. His tank's armor was dented with over 40 hits. The turret had jammed permanently, but the barrel still smoked. He'd single-handedly destroyed 6 enemy vehicles, including 2 anti-tank guns. The men who saw it couldn't believe it. They started calling it the ghost tank. Word spread fast through the front lines. A single mechanic had revived a dead tank and turned the tide of an entire skirmish. To soldiers drowning in endless war, his story became hope. Proof that even broken things can still fight. When Makarov woke up days later, a doctor told him, "You shouldn't be alive." He just smiled weakly and said, "Neither should the tank." He was awarded the Order of the Red Banner, one of the Soviet Union's highest honors, but he refused to take it at first. He said, it wasn't bravery, it was repair work. The officers didn't understand him. To them, he was a hero, but to Makarov, he was just a man who couldn't leave a broken thing behind. Months later, when his unit was reformed, Makarov asked one thing: "Let me take her again." The same tank, patched, repainted, scarred. He refused a new one, so they gave it back to him. He called it Betsy. Together they fought through Poland and into Berlin. The tank became infamous, riddled with mismatched panels, patched holes, and a reputation that terrified the Germans. Whenever the ghost tank appeared on the horizon, the enemy would scatter. Even the Soviet soldiers whispered, "That's Makarov's machine, the one that refuses to die." In April 1945, during the Battle of Berlin, Makarov's luck finally ran out. A direct hit from a Panzerfaust tore through the side of Betsy. She burst into flames instantly. Witnesses said Makarov didn't try to escape. He stayed inside, one hand on the controls, the other gripping his wrench. He went down with her. When the smoke cleared, all that was left was a blackened husk, and one mechanic's story burned into legend. After the war, soldiers who'd fought beside him swore that on quiet nights, when engines idled in the cold, they could still hear Makarov's voice. "Keep her running, boys. Don't let her die." Years later, Soviet engineers recovered the remains of his tank. They found Makarov's wrench fused to the metal of the control stick. It's still displayed today in a small war museum in Volgograd. No medals, no grand plaque, just a name and a quote scratched into steel: "I fix what war tries to break." Visitors walk past it not realizing what it means. But to those who know, it's not just a relic. It's a reminder that courage doesn't always shout. Sometimes it welds. They called him mad, but madness has many faces in war. Some lose their minds, others lose everything except their will to fight. Ivan Makarov wasn't a commander. He wasn't even a soldier meant for glory. He was a mechanic, a man who looked at death and said, "Give me a wrench." And with that, he built a legend out of rust, fire, and defiance. Because sometimes, the most dangerous man on the battlefield isn't the one who kills the most. It's the one who refuses to stop fixing what's already broken. This was the story of the mad mechanic who turned a broken tank into a battlefield legend. A reminder that in war, machines die, men die. But stories like his, they keep running, long after the engine stops.